the original, the white men who founded and created the greatest country on the world, America, right? With the help of God, they were able to do it. Did they have an intent that I don't know about? Did they do something wrong that I don't understand? Because it's crazy to me that these men went through all the hell they went through to create America, to make it
Mhm.
what it became. And yet it seemed to be so easily destroyed. Is there something I'm missing?
I think that there's a lot of complication there. It's when you talk about the men who did this, the men who didn't do this, they were all just a bunch of individuals, and ultimately the purpose, the reason, in my opinion, for the breaking away from Great Britain, England at the time, well, it was a land scam. At the high levels, it was a land scam. Once they cut off in like whatever it was, like 1768 or something, the king declared that you couldn't move west of the Appalachians. As soon as they did that, well, all those guys who were very wealthy landowners and claimed to have land all out there and all this incredible amounts of wealth, and the individuals who wanted to move out there because they knew that's where the money was. You go out, it was the real money in this country was land. As soon as you
Yeah.
didn't allow that, they started to foment some dissent. I don't believe the standard story about the Tea Party and all the other stuff, but you also have a group of men who are very different who fought the war than the ones who so-called gave us the Constitution. They're a completely different group of people. Yeah, there's a little bit of overlap, but I mean, everybody, at least when I was growing up, and I'm 60, and when I was growing up, you heard this fantasy about how George Washington could have been king. He was so popular at the end. Look at the government they actually chose, the Articles of Confederation, which is just basically written out of our history books as just this kind of failed experiment that we needed to get more powerful and the whole place was falling apart and all this crap. Those are all lies. The reality is they chose an incredibly decentralized, extremely weak central government. The idea that they would have voted him to be king is ludicrous. It's as fake as the idea that we're building back better now. That's not true.
I know.
Anybody
That's
can
not
see
true.
it, okay? And so the Articles of Confederation are an incredibly, very, very decentralized system that works quite well. And if we went back to that, we wouldn't have any of the problems we have for the most part. And the Constitution was formed about 12 years later-ish, dreamed up by very rich people. And a lot of people, like Patrick Henry, he refused to even go to the convention because he smelled a rat in Philadelphia. Tons of them didn't go. A huge number of so-called delegates didn't go because they knew what was up. Tons of them walked out. So the getting of the Constitution is one thing. The men who fought for it, they fought for all sorts of reasons. All sorts of men went off in World War I. They signed to go fight the war to end all wars. Was that what that was? No. Was World War II anything about that? No. Or any of the stories? Or was Desert Storm about that? With weapons of mass destruction? Is the Ukraine the story we're being given? No, it's always lies. So people are often stirred to fight for all sorts of things that may or may not even be true. They may be fighting for a lie, but you also have to remember how small this was. One of the biggest battles in Revolutionary War that was so incredibly important that occurred in Kentucky, they had 100 men involved in the fort. 100 dudes. This is nothing. We're not talking about, it's not hundreds of thousands, millions of people. It's 100 guys in a fort. This thing is built up as an incredibly important thing. It's like, okay, maybe it was a critical battle for, something that happened, but you have to understand what a totally different time it was. A completely different time. And to say things like we and they, you have to look at individuals.
Yeah.
Everybody might have had their own motivations. Some of these
That's
guys
true.
might have been good, some maybe not. Maybe some were something else. George Washington's nickname was the Town Destroyer. That's what he was known for from the
Wow.
French and Indian Wars, because he slaughtered people. He'd go through, he'd burn the town, he'd kill the women and children when the men were gone. That's who he was. Okay. So how many people know that? Well, very few, because again, the history is shaped and molded by the people who benefit from it. And this government, if the Constitution creates a limited government, and it's the most brilliant document of all times, then there's no such thing as a brilliant document, because this is the largest government that's ever been created in the whole history of the world that supposedly exists under the Constitution. And it can literally tell you how much water can flush in your toilet, and it's limited. It makes no sense. And so what we're told with the document, with what the reality of the document is, and what we're told about why they did it, versus the reality, very different. We're never going to know the true intentions of any man. I can't know the intentions of a man sitting in front of me at a table.
That's
He can
right.
tell me, but I can't know what's in his heart.
Yeah.
Only he knows. Only he knows what's in his heart. And so when Hillary Clinton tells me that she's doing something for my benefit, okay, I can assume she's not doing it for my benefit, but she says it. And what we have is speeches and writings.
Yeah.
If you read the writings of politicians throughout time, they're nothing but the best of intentions. But how many of them were and how many of them weren't, we can't know.